Hello and welcome to the Briefing Room. I'm Bill Freilich from WTCM Radio News. It's our weekly roundup of stories making headlines across northern Michigan, and we talk with the journalists covering those stories. And this week joining me, Sarah Simnich from 9 and 10 News. Welcome back, Sarah.
Thanks. It's been a while.
It has been. It's good to have you back.
Yeah.
Life in Cadillac going well. You've moved down there full time, right?
It is, yeah. I'm at the desk full time now for Fox 32 News at 7 and 10, and then 9 and 10 at 11. I enjoy it. It's a little different than reporting, but in a good way too. So I enjoy it a lot.
One of the nice things I think about being an anchor is that we get to kind of be aware, at least peripherally, of all the stories of the day. We're not just focused on one thing at a time. So you and I have a chance to kind of talk about a lot of different things today, and we'll move through them kind of quickly. But let's just start with last week's Grand Traverse County budget. And obviously they've got another budget presentation coming up next week on the 30th when they'll be talking about potential budget cuts for the county. $1 million to $1.5 million, and we're looking at cuts from the sheriff's office.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a big deal in the sense the sheriff's department. You know, that's always kind of hits a soft spot for people, that and fire crews as well. But I remember talking to some county officials last year around budget time, and they said, you know, we're okay this year, but next year we're likely going to have a problem, and that's surfacing now. So hopefully something can be done to avoid any cuts, but I think it's something that everyone across northern Michigan, county, city, no matter what level, township level, can relate to because it's so common now. So we'll have to see what happens. It's just going to be a wait and see.
Yeah, we're talking about 5 road deputies, a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain, so 8 positions in all. And then the administrator told me too, there's another 4 positions throughout the county. Health department, maybe Register of Deeds office that could be affected as well. Some of those could happen through attrition if someone retires.
Sure.
But it seems almost impossible with 12 cuts on the table that at least 1 or 2 of them aren't going to actually happen. You know, so we'll have to kind of keep tabs on that. It seems like you said too, public safety is kind of a sensitive issue for people. People start to pay attention, and is that our fault as the media? Do we like say, hey, guess what, they're going to cut road deputies?
I don't know if it's our fault. I think that I think it's just something people appreciate.
Can relate to.
It's something that they need in their neighborhoods and their streets and their communities, and you know that's something that they couldn't live without. They feel like, you know, and they would feel less safe, or you know they see that officer driving by their house every night at 9 o'clock and they feel good about it, you know, and that makes them feel safer. And then you bring in the whole factor of, you know, tax dollars and all of that. So they're wondering, you know, about that from that aspect of it. So I think there's a lot of different things that go into, you know, public safety, whether it's fire crews, or I remember when Traverse City Fire Department was looking at cutting, you know, and it was a big deal, or merging with Metro. And that was a big deal because the people within Traverse City were saying, well, Metro doesn't come here. They really only back up Traverse City Fire Department. So what happens if we lose Traverse City Fire Department? How long is it going to take Metro to get to us if they're out in Acme? You know, so I think that's kind of the same thing, is it's just that people really are appreciative of their public safety, and that's great. So that when it comes to something like this, you're right, they pay attention, they listen, because it's something important to them that they would be losing, essentially. The
other question I have, and this isn't directed at you, but it's you know, like you said, we've been talking about this for a year now. Next year is going to be bad. How much planning did they do? What did they do last year to lessen the impact this year? I think there's still a lot of questions out there.
I think that's something you'd have to look back at and see.
Yeah, all of a sudden we're up to $1.5 million, and it just seems like this could be a big hit.
Right.
Chronologically, let's go to Sunday now. We've got an explosion of sorts heard in the Sleeping Bear Dunes.
$14,000 explosion.
Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore. What happened? We don't really know.
We don't know yet. You know, I don't know if it was the DNR or local deputies say that it was a bomb, an explosive device. They don't know what was used. Right. But, you know, neighbors heard it. The neighbors we spoke with heard it 2.5 miles away, and they're the ones who called it in.
And at first nobody could find out where it came from.
And then visitors stumbled across it, and that's kind of when the, you know, investigation started. Luckily, no one was hurt, no one was nearby, but you know, they're just, right now, I know that the conservation officers are kind of just calling it an extreme act of vandalism. You know, I mean, there's no leads, as far as I know, on suspects.
And for those of you who don't know, we're talking about an outhouse that somebody figured out a way to blow up and basically destroy the outhouse. It almost seems as though this is probably a prank of some kind but obviously it's a pretty serious deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, you know, the Lakeshore said, it caused damage to state land or, you know, federal land. And so it's kind of like, that's kind of what's coming into play now too. And on top of that, the damage that was done.
Right.
You know, they say $14,000 worth, so.
And that brings up a point that makes me smile, is that I was looking at, I think it was the 9 and 10 website, and just the viewer comments, and someone said, what outhouse cost $14,000?
We got a lot of that on our website.
You know, I can renovate my kitchen for $9,000.
Right.
How much does it cost to build an outhouse?
Yeah.
So that's you know, maybe another question for down the road.
Right.
Another explosion this week, was it Monday in Clare County? Man, what a fortunate situation that we were talking about, a seasonal home where there was nobody home next door either. But again, a house explosion there. What can you tell us? And as an anchor, when you're reading these stories, you're prepping for the show, gosh, I know what goes through my mind. What goes through your mind?
Yeah, that exact thing. And I think what caught me, you know, particularly about this story was that our reporter interviewed the parents of the homeowner. And she had been up there with her boyfriend, and they were going to leave that morning, and they decided to leave the night before the explosion. And her mother said, well, you know, that's a blessing that they left when they did, because they could have been inside. You know, so I don't know what happened there. I mean, that's still under investigation. It's kind of, but yeah, that's right. It is a blessing. That's great that nobody was home. But the damage, I mean, there were parts of roof, you know, the roof in the trees. It was like very, very extensive damage. The home next door was damaged.
That's one of the many times that I love watching the TV news. I think you guys did a great job getting that family member who was able to tell that side of the story. That's not something that comes out in a press release. And then the video with, it was a shingle or a big piece of wood, like literally impaled on a tree branch. Man, I mean, that's just the visual that just kind of explained exactly how big of a deal this was for what presumably was a gas leak, you know, house explosion, the house next door catches fire. I mean, that's just it's a powerful story. And,
you know, the fire crews that were responded said, you know, this is the worst damage I've ever seen from even an explosion or a house fire. I mean, this is very, very extensive. So it may take a while to figure out what that was, you know.
Well, hey, I want to take a break here on the briefing room. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the stories making headlines, and we'll also check in with Sarah about a special story that she's working on for the weeks ahead. We'll be right back on the briefing room.
What is Up North TV?
It's TV that you do.
You pick the topic.
You write the script. You run the camera.
You edit the video.
It's your vision.
Your perspective.
Your story.
Commercial free.
Free speech.
What is Up North TV?
It's me.
It's you.
It's all of us.
View us on Analog 97.
Cable digital too.
Digital 992.
UpNorthMedia.org.
Welcome back to the briefing room. I'm Bill Freilich from WTCM Radio News. It's our weekly roundup of the stories that are making headlines across northern Michigan with the journalists that are covering those stories. And Sarah Simnich from Fox 32 and 9 and 10 News. Welcome back.
Thanks, Bill.
We wanted to touch on a couple of the other stories making headlines. One of the trials in court this week in Grand Traverse County, a gentleman who's accused of shooting at officers repeatedly. I think it was back in April, if I'm remembering right. Tell us about Richard Radcliffe.
Well, we were in the courtroom for the first day of it, and we've been, you know, seeking updates ever since. But pretty much what, you know, the interview or the courtroom sound that we had from his attorney was that he was trying to commit suicide by cop, and I think that's kind of what the defense is right now at this point. So I mean, we'll have to see what happens with that. I know that, you know, the officers, there was diagrams in court where they were telestrating and, you know, showing bullet holes and things like that. And I know that the officers said, you know, they tried to disarm him. Their pickup truck was really their only defense, because he was shooting from inside the home, you know, shooting outside. So, I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see. But that's definitely a story we've followed since the very beginning, since it happened.
And I remember, I think I went out there too for that, but shooting shots outside the house, the bullets hit the house across the street. I think you guys had a story with the homeowner there. And nobody was hurt, but it's still, I don't know, kind of a captivating story, and it's almost one of those that you kind of forgot about after 8 months.
Yeah, after a while. But, you know, anytime you involve officers, that's, you know, and there's a standoff or anything like that, of course, that's something we follow. And luckily nobody was hurt in that scenario. I think that was a real blessing, considering everything that happened in the home and outside. And so I don't know. We'll have to see. He's facing something like 9 charges in the case. So.
I want to throw a curveball at you because we didn't talk about this one, but we're all well versed enough to remember the Baby Kate story, and that wasn't this week, but 2 weeks ago, kind of another development down in Ludington. I know you guys were down there for that. This was live coverage. You were talking about breaking into regular programming. Take me through that day of we've got a big announcement. The Attorney General's coming to town. What's it like in the newsroom for that kind of a day? Well,
we prepare as much as we can the day before. The press release came to us that Attorney General Bill Schuette was going to have this press conference the next day, but we received that rather late in the day, the day before, which is typically how that works. So we had enough time to plan our coverage for the next day, but we did have 2 crews down there, and I was at the anchor desk anchoring a special report. So we cut into regular programming. We broadcasted the press conference live, and in the newsroom, we had some sort of speculation about what was going to happen, since we've been following the Baby Kate case for so long now. In murder charges is what he announced. I think the big surprise to everyone is that Bill Schuette was involved. I don't think anybody knew that, but they had reached out to him to kind of they said a second set of eyes to look at this case. And I don't know how often it is that he gets involved in cases like this. So we'll have to see what happens, but he's now charged with that. He's already in prison for unlawful imprisonment. He wouldn't go into detail. He just said that I'm confident that the evidence we have, a jury will be able to convict him.
And it seems, I guess on the one hand, it made me wonder what took so long, because we had this jailhouse letter that he wrote saying, this is what happened, that I yanked the car seat out. I didn't know Kate was in there. I cried. I didn't. I don't know if it was for a minute or an hour. And what else did he say? That she's in a better place now. Basically, you assume however you want to interpret, but like you said, basically admitting something happened. So I was surprised that it took this long. But also, like you said, there was the implication from the Attorney General that there was some new evidence.
Evidence. We knew that they had the botanist searching for the plant that was found on the bottom of his shoe. We covered that portion of the investigation. They had narrowed it down to something like a square mile. So do we know if they found something and they're not disclosing that? Is it the letter? I believe that question was asked at the press conference. Does this have to do with the letter, the jailhouse letter? And he wouldn't elaborate. He wouldn't say. So it could be that. I think it's just going to be another long road to following this case and seeing what happens. So,
it's captivating.
It is, and I think sometimes what happens is people lose sight of what it's about. We've never found Baby Kate, and everybody has their speculations about where she is. Is she alive? Is she not? I think so. That's kind of the interesting thing about all of this, is that she's still the victim in all of this, and so. Now it's just finding, I guess, who's responsible. So.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the future of what's coming up, and we're just a couple of weeks away from election time here in northern Michigan, all over, obviously. But election night is always a really busy night in a newsroom, especially in the broadcast news, where we're trying to update sometimes hourly, or if it's the web, frequently. So take us through what's an election night like for you. And I know it may be a little different now that you're on the anchor desk, but there's always a million things going on.
Yeah, there are. It just depends on, of all the counties that we cover, how many people are actually holding, something is on the ballot. It just depends on that. And so we break that down first of covering everything. And then we do have extra people, extra staff that stay late to get the tallies, the votes in and all of that. And we do. It's oftentimes we'll run a ticker on the bottom of our screen. We'll constantly update the website, Facebook, social media, so everybody's aware of that. So we'll also have crews. It depends on, we may have a live reporter at one of the precincts. It just depends on, what's being focused on, what is going to impact the most people, and things like that. So a lot goes into it. It's long hours, longer than normal hours, and a lot of prepping the day before, kind of getting graphics ready and websites ready and things like that. So there's a lot of overtime work in that sense.
I was going to ask you what you think maybe the challenges are for you or for the newsroom on a night like that? I mean, for me, I think the biggest one I've noticed is that we're a much smaller staff at WTCM at the radio than I have been in TV. So, I found myself there, maybe it was last November, till 2 o'clock in the morning. A, because I'm just curious naturally, but B, because the numbers are still coming in. And the other frustration I think is that some of the county clerks are a lot faster than others.
Right.
And some are slower than
well,
others.
that's the thing. There's certain counties that will send us an email every time they get a new tally, which is extremely helpful for us, so we don't have to keep calling and bothering them. But yeah, there are other counties that don't, and they'll send you one final tally. Well, that tally could come in at 2 in the morning, or it could come in at 11 at night. It depends on the kind of voter turnout as well, and it depends on how many people are actually counting the votes. But yeah, it's a lot of it too is just learning things as you're going on the air. This just in, we just learned this. So a lot of it is that just kind of being ready for whatever you're gonna hear next. And also, the next day too, if something passes or doesn't pass, or, going out to that community and asking, what does this mean for you guys? Whether it's, a fire millage or a library millage or whatever it is, what does this mean since this didn't pass, or, so I think that's a lot of it too, is the day after as well as the night of, and just a lot of extra hands is how we deal with it.
And I think the way we always seem to do things is we kind of have an idea of what the big ones are. We kind of know what we're going to cover on Wednesday, but depending on what happens Tuesday night, we may have to change gears completely.
Change.
Say, I didn't think this proposal was going to fail. It did. Now what?
Yeah.
Whether it's a school issue or a bus millage or
Right.
anything like that. So that can all change Wednesday morning too. Let's close out, Sarah, talking about November sweeps, the ratings period that it just makes me laugh thinking about all that kind of goes into those ratings periods. Not maybe everybody watching right now really knows how that works, but we've got 4 times a year when the audience is polled through the Nielsen ratings, and that's kind of where you put your money and put all your extra effort. Before we get to your specific story, again, tell me about the sweeps period and how everybody does something a little different and kind of kicks it up a notch as we head into November.
Notice a lot of special reports. A normal story on the news is anywhere from a minute to a minute and 30 seconds on any given topic. A special report will be anywhere from, it could be one part, it could be a 2-parter. If it's part 1 and part 2, they could each be 4 minutes apiece. If it's just one, it might be 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And a lot goes into writing that, a lot goes into lining up interviews, and most importantly, a lot goes into researching what you'd like to cover. Obviously, a special report wouldn't be something like breaking news. It would be sort of either a human interest piece or something that is intriguing. Like I did one with Jack, when I filled in at the DJ spot at WTCM, and I turned that into a special report, behind the scenes of radio. So kind of just things that people are interested in. We come up with the ideas and, just kind of brainstorm what we're going to cover.
There's a lot of stories. I mean, you guys have been known to do 100 special stories on a sweeps month.
Yes, we can do anything from, something like we did when the Carly Lewis murder investigation. After that was over, we did a 1 year later, catching up with the family and talking to them, and that was 2 parts for myself and my cameraman. So it was, a lot of work went into that. The interviews alone took 3 hours because we talked to parents, we talked to cousins, we talked to friends, and it was really telling the story from day one. What happened? Who was arrested for her murder? Who was convicted? How is the family doing now? What are they doing to remember her? So it's very extensive, and that is done along with our everyday responsibilities at work. We don't abandon our job for that one thing. We do it in between in our what would be normal free time. We work on that piece. We put all of our effort into that.
There's so much that goes into those stories. Like you said, you can spend a few hours on interviews, but then you have to take the tape or the audio.
You have to turn it into a story.
Turn it into a story. If you've got 3 hours of interviews, it may take you 5 hours to actually listen and write down what you want and go through all that. So every single special story can be 2, 3, 4, 5 day process, depending on the story, can it?
Right.
Well, I know you've got a special story coming up for November Sweeps, as you always do. So tell us what's on your agenda for this season.
We actually have worked closely with Northern Michigan Christian in McBain, and they have a unique program at the school that's called the Aerosmith program, and it was rooted in Toronto, and it started with a woman by the last name of Aerosmith who had learning disability. And she came up with this unique program after doing some research from scientists and finding what works for kids to learn who have learning disabilities like dyslexia. And this program is only implemented in like 30 schools across the world. And Northern Michigan Christian in McBain is one of them. And it's great because it literally changes the lives of kids who are learning disabled, who are behind in the regular classroom. We actually got to talk to a young girl who went through the program and said, now I'm actually more advanced than most of my classmates. And so that was great to see. We got to talk to one of the teachers who, was trained in how to implement the program. And then the superintendent who brought it, who's responsible for bringing it to the school. People come from all over the country to study at Northern Michigan Christian because of the Aerosmith program. And so it's really neat to meet some of these inspiring people and tell their story and basically how it changed their lives, just this program at school. So it's really neat. I'm looking forward to it. I'm writing it today, actually, going to start, writing it, and I'm excited to see what comes of it. So. And
when did you shoot the story?
We shot the story about a month and a half ago. So yeah, we spent a whole day shooting it. Yeah, and talked to 3 or 4 people, and then got back, wrote down my interviews, and now kind of just gathering thoughts. But sometimes with a story this challenging, it's cutting it down to 4 minutes. Yeah. There's so much information and content that you want to get out to the viewer, but sometimes you just have to scale back a little bit.
And that was always a hard thing for me too, is which soundbite are we going to drop, which person is not going to make it into this story, even though it kills me because I want to do it.
But you want to show everything.
Yeah, there's a lot to do it. And do you know when that's going to air yet?
That's going to air November 13th on Fox 32 News at 10.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it'll be online as well. So
we'll look forward to it. Yeah. Want to thank you for coming in, Sarah. Good to have you back.
Me.
And thanks everyone for tuning into The Briefing Room. I'm Bill Freilich, and we hope you'll join us again next time right here on The Briefing Room. Have a great day.